Hi everyone. One question that I get a lot is church. Why bother with church? Why should I go to church? There's a lot of people, sadly these days, that have been hurt by experiences with people in churches, or maybe they've never really gone to church. They feel uncomfortable with church, and so as a Christian, as somebody that wants to follow God, why is it important that I go to church? Can't I worship God as I'm out riding my bike or on a walk in His creation, or as I'm reading my Bible? Can't I just worship God at my own house on a Sunday morning? I'm here today with Pastor Jeffery Johnson, and he's written a book called The Church, Why Bother? And so, Pastor, why bother with church?
Yeah, I get the question a lot myself, and that's why I wrote the book, is that a lot of people don't feel the need to go to church. And that I have a relationship with the Lord, and they look at their Christianity, their religion, as just a personal, vertical reunion with the Lord. That's all they need. But what we have to realize, the New Testament was written to the local church, not necessarily to individuals, but to the local church. And one thing that the Apostle Paul did that's unique, he would go to unreached people groups and share the gospel for the first time, but he wasn't satisfied with just people being converted. It's okay, now you know the Lord, you're good to go. And he would leave. No, he would stay in an area until a local church was established, until the church had elders and leaders and was functioning, and then he felt satisfied to move on. And if he wasn't able to establish a church, he would send someone back to that area as to be a temporary pastor to help organize the local assembly.
So it seemed like that was pretty important to him. Like, he put a lot of emphasis on not just bringing people to Christ, but organizing something more.
That's right. And so the New Testament was written with the assumption that Christians would be an active member, active part of a local assembly of believers. And so for those who say, hey, I don't need the church, one of the questions they need to ask, who designed the church? Who organized the church? It's not like we come up and say, hey, let's start a church. No, it's God. It's the Word of God that has established it. It's God that organizes it. It's God that says, here are the officials, the leaders of the church. Here's what the church is supposed to do. Here's the function, the mission of the church. And so it's God's authority that establishes that. So if we're going to be obedient to God and followers of Christ, then we must follow Christ in the things that He's revealed to us. So if you say, hey, I want to follow Christ but don't go to church, how are you an obedient Christian if you're not following the command not to forsake the local assembling of yourself together? And so as it is command. And the Bible commands also that we're to submit to our elders. So how can you obey that command if you're not in a local assembly of believers?
Good question. Yeah. So, do you have any advice for somebody that's looking for a good church? We live in a country where it seems like, in a lot of places, especially in the South, it seems like there's a church on every corner.
Right.
Where does somebody start?
Yeah.
How do I know that I'm going to a church that's going to help me get closer to God?
Well, one, you need to know what a church is. And a lot of people, there's a confusion in what church is, and a lot of people burn out on church because the church has sold them, many churches have sold themselves out. They have become pragmatic to the point of giving people what they want. Churches become a business. And that puts the consumer, the potential member, the potential attender in charge. And when you're trying to cater to what people want to grow a big church, then really the consumer realizes, okay, I'm really the one who determines what the church is all about. But no, the church, according to God, is an assembly of God's people where the Word of God is taught and proclaimed and protected and preached. So a church is not only where the ordinances are going to be, but the church is going to be where the Word of God is properly and faithfully proclaimed. So any church that their main mission is not to articulate, spread, teach the Word of God is really not a church. And so the primary thing you should look in a church, the number one mark of a healthy church, is faithful teaching and preaching of the Bible. And so the number one thing a person should look for a church is not what type of youth group they have, or music ministry they have, or other secondary ministries that are very attractive to some people. They need to say what type of teaching and what do they believe? Are they faithful with the Word of God? So that's the primary thing any Christian should look for when they search for a church.
Awesome. And there's lots of great resources on finding a good church out there. Like I think of the organization 9 Marks.
Yes, that's great.
They've got a lot of great resources. They even have a church search where you can go on and look for churches in your area. Do you know of any other good resources out there for someone that's looking for a biblical church?
Yeah, like you said, 9 Marks. There's a book called The 9 Marks of a Healthy Church by Mark Dever. That is a wonderful book. I would suggest that. That would be a good place to start.
Awesome. And of course, the church, Why Bother? If you would like a little more detailed look into what the church is and why it's important, this would be a good book to get as well. Brother, appreciate you answering this question and sitting down and talking with us.
Hey, appreciate it. Thanks.